Hello everyone, and welcome to my Young and the Restless Official 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. It was one of those moments where time seemed to freeze, where the air grew thick and heavy, and the heart pounded so hard it drowned out the world. Nick Newman stood in the middle of crimson lights, his hand gripping his phone so tightly his knuckles turned white. Sharon's voice cracked through the line, raw, frantic, and filled with agony. "Nick, you need to come right now. It's Noah, he's not breathing." Nick's mind went blank. The words didn't make sense. His son? Noah? Not breathing? The cafe around him blurred, the laughter of a group of teens in the corner fading into static. Every second felt like an eternity. He could barely breathe himself. "Sharon, what happened?" he demanded, his voice shaking. "Tell me what happened." But all he could hear on the other end was Sharon sobbing, her voice breaking between gasps as she repeated those awful words, "Come here before Noah dies." Without another thought, Nick bolted. Chairs toppled over as he rushed out of crimson lights. His car keys fumbled in his shaking hand as he jumped behind the wheel. The drive to the hospital felt like an endless nightmare. His thoughts raced, images flashing in his head of Noah as a little boy, laughing with Faith by the lake, smiling shyly during family dinners, his voice saying, "Dad, I'm fine," echoing over and over. But he wasn't fine now. He was fighting for his life. As Nick tore through the streets of Genoa city, Sharon's voice haunted him. He could still hear the desperation in her tone. Sharon Collins had been through more heartbreak in her lifetime than anyone should have to endure, but nothing compared to this. Nothing compared to the possibility of losing Noah. When she had found him collapsed, blood staining the ground after that horrifying crash, her entire world had shattered. The hospital was chaos when Nick arrived. The screech of wheels, the urgent commands from nurses, the sound of machines beeping in rapid succession, it all blurred together. "Where is he?" Nick shouted as he ran toward the front desk. His heart was pounding so fast it hurt. "My son, Noah Newman, where is he?" The nurse recognized him immediately and pointed toward the trauma room. Through the glass, Nick saw Sharon, her hands covered in blood, her hair disheveled, her face streaked with tears. She looked up as he approached, her lips trembling. "Nick," she whispered. "They're trying to bring him back." Nick froze in place. Inside the trauma room, doctors and nurses surrounded Noah's lifeless body. The monitors were flatlining. "Clear," shouted a doctor, and the defibrillator paddles pressed against Noah's chest. His body jolted violently, but the line remained flat. Sharon's knees buckled, and she let out a strangled cry, gripping the wall for support. Nick rushed to her, pulling her into his arms. "Come on, Noah," Nick whispered under his breath, his voice breaking. "Come on, buddy. Don't do this. Don't you dare leave us." Another shock. Another lifeless silence. And then, beep. 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 The sound was faint but steady. Noah's heart was beating again. Sharon let out a sob of relief, her entire body trembling as Nick held her close. But the doctor's grave expression warned them that the battle was far from over. A nurse approached them gently. "He's stable, for now. But his injuries are severe. We've induced a coma to help his body heal." Sharon clung to Nick's arm as tears poured down her face. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "He was fine this morning. He said he was just going out for a drive." Her voice cracked. "I told him to be careful. I told him I loved him." Nick's jaw tightened, grief mixing with fury. "What caused the crash?" he demanded. "Was it another car? Did someone do this?" The nurse hesitated. "They're still investigating. But the police mentioned, it didn't look like an accident." Nick's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" His brakes were cut. The words hit like a thunderbolt. Sharon's eyes widened in horror. "No," she gasped. "No, that's not possible." Who would do that to Noah? Nick's mind reeled. His son hadn't just been in an accident, someone had tried to kill him. The fury building inside him was volcanic. Whoever did this is going to pay, he vowed, his voice low and trembling with rage. While doctors continued to monitor Noah, Sharon and Nick sat beside his bed. The sight was almost unbearable. Tubes and wires surrounded him, his once vibrant face pale and bruised. Sharon gently brushed her hand through his hair, whispering through her tears. "You're my miracle, Noah. You have to fight. You have to come back to us." Nick's eyes burned as he watched the rise and fall of his son's chest. Every breath was a fragile miracle. He thought about all the years he had missed with Noah, the times they'd drifted apart, the arguments, the distance. Now, faced with the possibility of losing him, all of that vanished. "If you wake up," Nick said softly, "I'll never take a moment for granted again." But as the night dragged on, dark questions began to swirl. Who wanted Noah dead, and why? It wasn't long before the investigation turned up something shocking. The car Noah had been driving wasn't his own, it was Holden Novak's. Holden had swapped cars with Noah earlier that day after a minor issue with his vehicle. If the brakes were tampered with, then maybe the real target hadn't been Noah at all. Maybe it was Holden. When Nick heard that, he nearly lost it. So my son almost died because of someone else's mess? Sharon's lips trembled as she looked toward Holden, who stood in the hallway with guilt written all over his face. "Nick, please," she whispered, "not here." But Nick wasn't listening. He stormed toward Holden. "You're going to tell me right now what's going on," he demanded. "Who's after you?" Holden's eyes filled with torment. "Nick, I didn't know." "Didn't know?" Nick roared. "Because of you, my son is lying in that bed, barely hanging on. You'd better start talking, or I swear." Sharon grabbed Nick's arm, tears spilling down her cheeks. "Stop it. This isn't going to help Noah." Holden's voice broke. "Someone from my past must have done this. I've been trying to keep it quiet, but there are people out there who want revenge. I never thought they'd come after me like this." Nick's fury turned into disbelief. "Revenge? For what?" Before Holden could answer, Detective Chance Chancellor entered the room. His expression was grim. "Nick, Sharon, we found something else. The car's security footage was wiped, but we pulled partial data from nearby surveillance." He hesitated before showing them an image on his tablet, a shadowy figure crouched near the car hours before the crash. Sharon gasped. "Oh my God, is that Audra?" Nick's eyes narrowed. Why would Audra Charles have anything to do with this? Chance's voice was calm but heavy. "We're not sure yet. But it looks like she's involved." The air in the room turned icy. Audra had a long and tangled history with Noah, one filled with passion, betrayal, and heartbreak. She had once loved him deeply, but their relationship had ended in flames. Could she really be capable of something this dark? Meanwhile, as the hours passed, Sharon refused to leave Noah's side. She sat in silence, her hand gripping his, whispering prayers. Memories flooded her mind, the day she first held him in her arms, his laughter as a child, the night she stayed up waiting for him to come home safe. And now, she was begging the universe not to take him away. Nick finally sank into a chair beside her, exhaustion written all over his face. "I can't lose him, Sharon," he whispered hoarsely. "Not Noah. Not like this." Sharon looked at him, her tear-filled eyes filled with both pain and strength. "You won't. We won't. He's going to fight. He's our son, Nick. He has your heart and my stubbornness. He'll make it through." But deep down, both of them knew the truth, the doctors weren't optimistic. Noah's brain had been deprived of oxygen for several minutes. Even if he survived, there was a chance he might never wake up again. Then, in the dead of night, Sharon heard something, a faint sound. Her heart leapt. She turned toward Noah's bed and saw his fingers twitch. "Nick," she gasped. "Nick, look." Nick jumped up, eyes wide. Noah? Son? Can you hear us? Noah's eyelids fluttered. The monitors began to spike. Sharon's breath hitched as tears streamed down her face. Come on, baby, she whispered. Come back to us. And then, weakly, Noah's lips parted. Mom? Sharon let out a sob of joy, collapsing against Nick's shoulder. He's awake, she cried. He's really awake. The doctors rushed in, confirming the miraculous recovery. Noah's vitals were improving, but his voice was fragile when he spoke again. The car, it wasn't an accident. Nick and Sharon exchanged horrified looks. What do you mean? Nick asked gently. Noah swallowed hard. Someone was following me. I saw their car behind me before everything went black. That revelation changed everything. Whoever was behind this was still out there. And now, the Newmans had a target on their backs. Outside the hospital room, Chance made a call. We're dealing with something bigger than we thought, he said quietly. Keep an eye on Audra Charles, and Holden Novak. Until we know the truth, no one's safe. Inside, Sharon held her son's hand, refusing to let go. You scared me half to death, she whispered, her voice trembling with relief and fear. When I called Nick, I thought I was losing you forever. Nick leaned forward, his voice low but full of emotion. You're going to be okay, son. I promise you. We're going to find who did this. And they're going to pay. Noah looked between them, his expression dazed but determined. Dad, it wasn't just about me. They wanted to send a message. Sharon's eyes widened. A message? What kind of message? Noah's voice dropped to a whisper. They said. The truth always finds its way out. Silence fell over the room. Sharon and Nick exchanged a look of confusion and dread. What truth? What secret was buried deep enough to make someone try to kill Noah over it? As dawn broke over Genoa city, the storm was far from over. The danger wasn't gone, it was only beginning. Sharon's desperate scream, "Come here before Noah dies," had set everything in motion. But now, the Newmans would have to face a far darker truth, one that could destroy their family forever. And somewhere, in the shadows outside the hospital, a figure watched from a distance, smirking, waiting, and whispering to themselves, this is only the beginning. The hospital hallway was eerily quiet as the first rays of dawn filtered through the windows, painting the sterile walls in a pale golden glow. Sharon stood by Noah's bedside, her hand resting gently on his arm, her heart still pounding from the chaos of the night before. She could still hear the echo of her own scream, "Come here before Noah dies," reverberating through her skull. The words that had shattered Nick's world and nearly shattered hers too. Noah looked fragile under the harsh hospital lights. His face was bruised, his lips pale, but his heartbeat was steady. The machines that had kept him alive through the night hummed quietly now, almost in rhythm with Sharon's breathing. Every rise and fall of his chest felt like a miracle, but her heart couldn't rest. Not until she knew who had done this, and why. Nick entered the room carrying 2 cups of coffee, though his hands trembled so much that some of it spilled onto the floor. He set them down on the table and looked at Sharon. His eyes were red, sleepless, and filled with fury. I just talked to Chance again, he said quietly. They're closing in on whoever tampered with the brakes. Sharon looked up. Did they find out who did it? Nick exhaled sharply. They found fingerprints on the underside of the hood, smudged, but partial. They're running a match. Chance said it'll take a few hours. Sharon swallowed hard. What about Audra? Is she still being questioned? Nick nodded grimly. She claims she had nothing to do with it, that she didn't even know Noah was back in town. But Chance said she looked nervous as hell when he mentioned Holden's name. Holden Novak. The name hung heavy in the air like a curse. Sharon's gaze drifted toward the window, her thoughts racing. If the car was meant for Holden, she said softly, then whoever did this wanted him dead. But why use Noah's life to send a message? Nick clenched his jaw. Because whoever it is doesn't care who gets hurt. There was a knock at the door. When Sharon turned, she was startled to see Audra Charles standing there. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hair messy, her expression torn between guilt and desperation. "Sharon." "Nick," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "Can I come in?" Nick's eyes narrowed immediately. "You've got a lot of nerve showing up here." Audra winced but stepped forward. "I had to see him. I had to see if he's okay." Her eyes landed on Noah, and she gasped softly, her hand covering her mouth. "Oh God, what did they do to you?" Sharon moved protectively closer to her son. "You need to tell us everything you know," she said sharply. "If there's anything you're hiding, now is the time." Audra's eyes filled with tears. "I swear to you, I didn't do this. I didn't hurt Noah. But I think I know who did." Nick's heart froze. "What did you just say?" Audra glanced nervously toward the hallway before closing the door behind her. "Holden's not who you think he is," she whispered. "He's been living under an alias for years. His real name isn't Holden Novak, it's Liam Harrow." Sharon frowned. "Liam Harrow? Why does that name sound familiar?" Audra took a shaky breath. "Because he used to work for Ashland Locke. He was one of his private enforcers, the people who did his dirty work behind the scenes. After Locke's empire collapsed, Liam disappeared. Everyone thought he was dead. But he came back, changed his name to Holden Novak, and built a new life here in Los Angeles." Nick's mind spun. "You're telling me my son almost died because of some ghost from Ashland Locke's past?" Audra nodded slowly. "It looks that way. And if what I heard is true, Holden stole something from someone very powerful before he vanished, something worth killing for." Sharon's stomach turned. What could possibly be worth this? Audra looked down. A digital file, something Ashland called the Genesis Protocol. It was a blackmail list, filled with names of CEOs, politicians, and powerful figures that Locke used to manipulate the business world. If that file still exists, it's enough to destroy lives. Nick took a step closer, his voice like thunder. "And Holden has it?" Audra hesitated. "He did. But I think someone found out, and they wanted him dead before he could use it." Silence fell. Sharon's heart raced as she looked at Noah. "So Noah was in the wrong place at the wrong time," she whispered. "He paid for Holden's sins." Audra's lip quivered. "I tried to warn him. I went to his apartment that night, but he was already gone. I didn't know he'd taken Holden's car." Nick's rage boiled over. "You knew there was danger, and you didn't call the police? You could have prevented this." Tears streamed down Audra's face. "I didn't know it would go this far. I didn't know they'd actually." "Enough!" Nick barked, slamming his fist against the wall. "You're done talking. You're leaving now, before I forget she's not pressing charges yet." But Sharon's voice stopped him cold. "Wait." Nick turned to her, confused. Sharon's expression was different, focused, haunted. "If Audra's telling the truth," she said slowly, "then the person who did this isn't finished. They think Holden, or Noah, still has the file. They'll come back to finish the job." Audra's eyes widened. "You're right. Which means Noah's still in danger." Nick froze. "Then we're not waiting around." He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling Chance. We need protection on this room, now." Within minutes, 2 officers stood guard outside Noah's door. But Sharon couldn't shake the unease twisting in her stomach. She'd seen enough tragedy to know that danger didn't always come from outside, it could come from anywhere, even within the walls of safety. Later that evening, when the hospital quieted again, Holden showed up. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. He approached the room hesitantly, but Nick was waiting for him. "You've got 5 seconds to tell me the truth," Nick said coldly, blocking the doorway. "Who are you really? And what kind of mess did you drag my son into?" Holden looked down, guilt written all over him. Nick, please, I never wanted any of this. I tried to protect Noah. I swear I didn't know they'd come after him. Who's they? Nick demanded. Holden sighed heavily, his voice breaking. Locke's old associates. After he died, they wanted to erase every trace of his secrets. I used to be one of them. I got out years ago, but before